Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Okus, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I am Sam Okus, editor-in-chief of NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision makers. This week, I'm talking with Steve Schliemann. He is the president of Ford's Garage USA. This Florida-based brand launched as an homage to Ford Motor Company and founder Henry Ford, who had a winter home in Fort Myers where this restaurant first opened. Miraculously, Ford leaders loved this concept and entered into a licensing agreement with Ford's Garage, and they've supported its growth over the past decade as Ford's Garage has expanded to 23 locations, all featuring big footprints with Model T and Model A cars throughout, as well as other Ford memorabilia. Steve joined the podcast to talk about how you can properly execute a theme in your restaurant without it feeling too over the top or like it's a one-time tourist destination. In this conversation, you will learn more about the benefits of a strong brand partner, how interactivity can drive excitement in your restaurants, and how you should treat technology if it doesn't match your vibe or your aesthetic. Jumping now into my interview with Steve Schliemann, the president of Ford's Garage USA. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 6 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, Steve Schliemann, the president of Ford's Garage. Steve, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm excited to talk about this brand and your guys' plans for where it could go into the future. But Steve, if you could just start by telling me a little bit more about Ford's Garage. How did this brand come to be?
Yeah, Sam, good to talk to you. It's a great question. This was started, the first one was started in Fort Myers, Florida in 2012. And for those who don't know, that was the winter home of Henry Ford in Fort Myers, and his neighbor was Thomas Edison down there. So these guys were Ford car enthusiasts, and they had a restaurant space in downtown Fort Myers. And they said, let's go ahead and do a cool little burger and beer brand here, and let's just call it Ford's Garage. They didn't have the permission to use the name, although they took exactly the same Ford logo, used it. Then they proceeded to open up a second location using Ford's Garage, at which point they got a phone call from Ford Motor Company, but it wasn't from the legal department, it was from the licensing department. And a couple of people from Ford had visited the restaurant, they liked it, and they said, we like what you guys are doing, it's unauthorized, however, let's sign a license agreement with you guys, and we'll let you go ahead and be the official licensee for Ford Motor Company to do Ford's Garage restaurants. So in 2015, they signed a license agreement with Ford Motor Company, and since then, we've had a great relationship with Ford Motor Company.
This is the best outcome I could possibly think of for that situation, because you started telling that story, and my guess would have been the corporate giant trolls the small business and sends the cease and desist, and you guys tweak the branding. I've never really heard an outcome quite like that. Were you guys surprised that was the outcome of that?
Extremely surprised and lucky, because you're exactly right. Usually you get a cease and desist letter and you shut it down, you have to rename it something else. But I think they really loved the brand and loved what was happening and loved the enthusiasm behind it. So I think they got lucky on this one.
Sure. So tell me, how does this come to life? How does Ford come to life in a Ford's Garage restaurant?
So yeah, great point. So we, being the official licensee for the brand, we're able to use the Ford logo, which that blue oval is extremely powerful in the United States. It's amazing how we get ready to open up a new restaurant. Everybody already knows the name. We don't have to advertise a new restaurant opening because of the power of the name. With that, we use the logo. We've got Model A and Model T cars there. We have access to all the original car parts. And through their strength, it helps us also on leases at the same time be able to get some good properties that are out there, because they love the fact that the affiliation with Ford Motor Company and the image and the iconicness of the brand in general. So it's been a great experience working with them to this point.
I was going to say, now that they kind of have a stake in this, right? Now that the Ford brand is projected through the restaurant, seems like it would be in their best interest to collaborate with you guys. What does the partnership look like on an ongoing basis? How do they, help you guys to make sure that the Ford brand is being projected in a good manner?
Yeah, that's great. So their creative agency is CAA, which is out of LA. And so we work with them on partnering with Ford Motor Company to do some really cool things. So for example, we're the official watch party for the Kentucky Derby this year
Oh,
at all of our 23 locations around the country. And that was put together by Ford, who is a big sponsor for the Kentucky Derby, getting a hold of us and saying, hey, how can we collaborate and work together with you on doing some mint juleps, some Woodford products, some T-shirts, some special glassware, and be the official watch party. So that's one way we're able to collaborate with Ford Motor Company and on some unbelievably awesome events.
that's great. Any limitations? I mean, is there anything that you now feel like you maybe can't do because of the Ford branding being a part of this?
Not at this point, although they're very protective of the brand image, which they need to be. They have approval rights for every site we do in the country to make sure that we're going in places that are appropriately for what they expect the brand, where they expect the brand to be at. But at this point, we've had no problem with them at all, and we look forward to better partnerships with them and doing some other creative marketing things, throughout the next couple of years.
You mentioned that the site selection piece to this. In my head, I have not had the pleasure of visiting a Ford's garage yet, but soon enough, hopefully. But in my head, I'm thinking, oh, like an old car dealership would be perfect. There's got to be a lot of those around. I mean, what is the good real estate for this brand? How are you guys going about the site selection process?
Yeah, good question. So the brand is it's modeled off a 1930s old gas station or garage.
Mhm.
So with that, you have some high ceilings. It's a little bit it's themed as much as you will, looking at a theme deal more like Disney. We have quite large spaces. So they're about 7,500 square foot conditioned space, about a 1,500 square foot patio. We play very loud music. We're not a sports bar. We have TVs, but we don't have any of the sound on the TV. So it's more music themed. You have cars on the inside. Kids love it because we let them go behind the bar and honk the horn of the old cars back there. So there's a lot of interactive stuff going on within the restaurant that creates some excitement for the brand. So we look for locations that are out there more in suburban locations, where you have the demographic is probably a little bit higher in blue collar. So we go anywhere from grandparents who are bringing in their grandkids. So we span the globe quite a bit. Big business Friday, Saturday, and Sunday brunch. So our restaurants are quite large in order to accommodate the big volumes we do on the weekends.
Well, if you've got cars, they have to be big, right? You got cars taking the space of tables. How many cars are we talking about? Like, how do you find that right balance of the theme, the decor with tables and places for customers?
Yeah, so we have the Model A cars are typically black and they sit above the main bar in the dining
Okay.
space. So they're up above elevated, which is great for people to sit around the bar and take a look at. We typically will have another one or two inside the space, a couple on the patio, and then a couple out in the parking lot area at the same time. So usually 3 to 5 cars in every location, which leads to a lot of Instagram posts and pictures and whatnot. People like to talk about the cars and take pictures with them.
Yeah, I imagine that this kind of does the marketing for you, right? But what's the marketing approach? I mean, how do you project the Ford's Garage, branding to nearby communities when you're coming in? What's the message you're trying to tell them?
Sure. So part of it is being local. So how do we keep it local? We try and be the anti-chain. One way we do try and keep it local is we have what's called Burgers of Fame. And so we have 15 burgers on the menu, and every burger is named for somebody in that local community. So it could be a principal of a local school, it could be the local fire marshal, it could be the local mayor. So a burger is named after them. People see that it's exciting. They come in, we get they get a hat, they get their burger, they come in and eat burgers for free with their names on the menu. So how do we continue to drive more and more local business by trying to keep the brand as local as we can? Having 32 different drafts in the restaurants, it's mostly local beers that we serve. So what's popular in the neighborhood that people love, and so we love highlighting the local beer brands that are special to that little town that we do business in.
Any connection to cars? Because I'm just curious, I think about like a Firehouse Subs and there's a very direct connection with the EMT in the local community. Is there something like that going on here too? Do you look for like a local racing team, or certainly if there's a racetrack in the area, is that part of the plan?
It is, and although Ford dealership, which is very strong, the dealership network across the country. So we do a lot of car shows, typically on Saturday mornings. where it doesn't have to be just Ford cars, but if I think of our restaurant in Sarasota, we had about 300 cars out there a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday. So we open up early. They have coffee, they have brunch, and they're there to show off their cars. We had a special event that we expected about 100 cars in our Dallas or Plano, Texas location. 480 cars showed up, and it was a massive rally in the parking lot. So, we encourage that. We love that. And that's definitely a local driver or business that are the car enthusiasts.
Sure. All right. So, obviously this branding sounds incredible. Again, I haven't had the pleasure of visiting one, but I can't wait to see what this looks like in real life. But, this is a real theme that you're leaning into. And I'm wondering how you keep this from becoming kitschy, because, if I think of some examples, and this is no disrespect to like a Planet Hollywood, but, sometimes when you go into those restaurants, it's like, okay, overboard, we get it. How do you make sure that this is still a restaurant people want to go back to over and over, and not just visit once to get the experience and then they just don't go back?
No, it's a great point. So, we try not to be kitschy that way. So you'll see everything car related in there. The signs that we have hanging around the restaurants are typically from the 1930s and 1940s. We try not to do anything that's 1980s, 1990s. It's not, there's some thematic behind it, but it's not in your face everywhere around the restaurant. We want the vibe of the restaurant to come through, the awesome burgers that we serve and the great, comfort foods we serve, along with a great bar atmosphere at the same time. So you'll go in there, you see a lot of things going on, but it's not in your face. And that's something that we're very cognizant of, making sure that we don't become a theme brand that you visit once a year, you don't come back.
Sure. And I hope this doesn't sound like biased or anything, but I think of like a car show, and my dad was super into car shows, and so I think of car shows and I think old men, and again, not to sound too prejudiced here, but that's kind of what jumps to mind. But you're talking about, appealing to kids and families. And I know obviously you're trying to get more demographics. What's the universal appeal here, so it doesn't become sort of a niche customer base that's coming into, oh, cool, check out some cars?
Yeah. So it's broad-based. You talk about family, the demographic, it's 50% male, 50% female. So we do offer a lot of salads and light items at the same time. It is family driven, where kids love to come in there and see the nostalgia of some of the old cars that are in there. And we do drive a lot of families because of that. And the other thing too is that, our price points in our restaurants are very attractive for families. So, we're cognizant of trying to make sure that, the per person average in price is not above $25. So a family of four can eat there for $100. With great quality food and a great atmosphere, and get excited about coming back again.
Mm-hmm. All right. So tell me about the expansion strategy here. Going back to the story, you guys sprang up about a decade ago, partnered with Ford, which obviously is a great springboard for you, I'm sure. How has the expansion looked? You're at 23 locations, I believe you said. Are you franchising? How are you entering new communities to bring the Ford's Garage experience to new customers?
Sure. So we have 5 franchisees currently that are building new restaurants. We're also doing some company locations in conjunction with the franchisees. So more joint ventures with some of the franchisees that are out there. We did do a partnership with Bozard Ford in St. Augustine, Florida, where we actually opened the Ford's Garage on Ford Motor Company or Ford dealership property there. So we're actually in their parking lot. It's a great partnership with them. We do have a Ford dealership network plan that we have in place, that if we open up in a city like Daytona Beach, the local Ford dealer can invest in our restaurant in the space. We have something unique, Ford dealers around the country. And so that's our expansion plan, as part of it through dealerships, and the rest of it through some other local franchise groups around the country.
That's incredible. I mean, there's Ford dealerships all over the country. Does it feel a bit like your growth potential is limitless? I mean, what does that look like? What do you think the ceiling on this thing is?
So I think it is limitless. I mean, there is the dealership network around the country is fantastic. At this point, with 23 restaurants open, we've got another 6 that are under construction right now, and another 8 in lease negotiation. So we're pretty aggressive out there to expand the brand in areas where it makes sense. And we're excited about signing some multi-unit development agreements in future cities around the country that we're actively working.
Got it. So what's been your challenges? I mean, obviously there's any number of challenges facing the restaurant industry recently. For Ford's Garage, what primarily has been the most difficult thing for you guys to deal with?
So for current restaurants, it'd be the inflation. The commodities have been a challenge for us. being able to, not only procure some of the stuff we're looking for, but also get it for the price we're looking for. So commodities would be a challenge. The labor market has been tight, has been tough. We're out there trying to test some different technology platforms, and in the hospitality business, is a fine line between technology and hospitality, and where do you draw the line of going too overboard when you come to ordering in restaurants, ordering for customers or having them use a device. So we're testing a lot of different things to see what makes sense. For new restaurant locations, the challenges are how far out you have to order items like kitchen equipment or garage doors or electrical equipment. Some of the stuff you have to order a year in advance, or you're actually trying to buy it even before you have a lease signed, because lead time is so far out on some of these new units. Probably 3 or 4 years ago, you could get a restaurant open up in about 6 months. Now it's taking a little over a year.
That must especially be a challenge for a restaurant such as Ford's Garage, where I imagine if you talk about something like trade dress, you guys have probably a very specific aesthetic you're going for. Does that make it especially hard for you to track down some of these products you need to bring a Ford's Garage to life?
It does. It does. I mean, trying to get some of the products that we're looking for and procure them. So for instance, the Model A and Model T cars, going back in the 1930s, the Ford Motor Company produced about 5 million of those cars. So there's a ton of them out there. And we do have a gentleman who travels the country picking up the old cars for us. He takes them back to Fort Myers, Florida. He refurbishes them, takes all the parts out of them, delivers them, new back to our restaurants. And then we use the parts he pulled out of there. And those are the parts that are hanging in our restaurants. So it's a lot involved in decor and design on the future of the restaurants that we build.
There's some people listening to this episode right now thinking that is my dream job. Just go track down some Model Ts, bring them back to Florida. That's a heck of a job. Not a lot of people have that. Not a lot of restaurants have that kind of person on staff. And again, is Ford helping you with that too? I mean, when it comes to tracking down parts and cars, do they have a hand in being able to track down some of these things for you?
At this point, no, because they let us know there's so many of them that are out there. But I would venture to say that if we ran into difficulty trying to find them, they would be there to help us.
Gotcha. I'm thinking about off-premises service, going back to some of the challenges and of course, thinking about the last couple of years and how a lot of restaurants have adapted. Off-premises services became really huge for so many, especially full-service restaurants, to be able to navigate some of the challenges, open up a new sales channel. What does that look like for Ford's Garage? I mean, for something that seems so specific to the dine-in experience and being able to see that aesthetic and experience it, how do you translate that to off-premises, if at all?
So we've never been very great or really good at doing off-premise. We've put a kind of a full court press on being a choice for customers to use for off-premise. We do have 2 restaurants that do quite a bit of it, but there are some great brands that are out there that execute it extremely well. So we're in the middle right now of taking a look at, how we do our ordering, how we do our packaging, what is the customer experience on, or being able to go online, pre-order, prepay, drive up to the restaurant. The experience needs to be relatively quick and easy for the customer to use. And that's one thing that we're doing a full court press on this year, to make it something that we want to be, if customers choose that they don't want to eat in the restaurant and want to take it home, we want to be one of the places they're going to choose to do that with.
All right, so call me crazy, but a drive-through or like Model T delivery vehicles, like some of those seem like they'd be a perfect fit for you guys, right?
That'd be a great fit for us. I mean, driving through some of the design stuff we're working on right now is pretty cool for that customer experience if they're going to drive through a Ford's Garage and pick up food.
Do like a drive-through of 1950s.
I'm not sure about a Model A or Model T delivering it, but it might be. It's not a bad idea, Sam. We might need to think about that.
You'd really be putting that guy to work, the guy who's refurbishing this car. So you had to come up with a lot of those. But I think it could be a thing. Just imagine that billboard out on the roads, Ford's Garage delivering food. Think about opportunities for Ford's Garage. What do you think are some of the biggest opportunities? Not just expansion, but just how this brand evolves going forward. What are you looking at in the coming years?
Sure. So I think, one of the things we're very innovative in a lot of things that we're doing right now. And I think if you go back to Ford and all the patents that Henry Ford and his company created in the past were unbelievably unique, and there's a tremendous amount of them that are out there. So we innovate a lot from, doing a lot of limited time offers on a quarterly basis where we introduce new foods and new beverage to the consumers. So we have new news to talk about all the time. We're always testing different kitchen equipment. So there's so much really neat, cool stuff that's out there right now for better cooking platforms, better quality of the food coming out. We're always looking at different ingredients to increase the quality ingredients that we're using in every one of our items. It's a big deal for us. And then the overall customer experience about that for, they're really looking more for speed in some of these restaurants. So what is some technology that we can put into place that's something that they're accepting and feel good about, that we can go ahead and put into them a test and see what happens with it. So there's been a lot of restaurant chains that are out there that are testing a lot of this and having a tremendous amount of success with it.
The need for speed. Steve, I've got so many of these guys. I mean, working for a car themed restaurant company has got to be the best. There's so many puns and so many things that are just low hanging fruit for you. When it comes to innovation, obviously there's a lot of high tech things out there for the restaurant industry, but for Ford's Garage being so rooted in history, do you find any trouble balancing some of these new high tech tools you can employ in the restaurant with a very historical themed restaurant?
Yeah, you do. And I think some of it has to be things that the customers don't see, but they feel that things are moving along a lot smoother, maybe a little bit faster for them. So, if I go back to the cooking platforms that are out there right now, there are, with some of the labor challenges, how do you find it a little bit easier to hire some maybe underskilled help and be able to train them on some of the cooking equipment that's pretty much self-efficient and does it on its own?
Mm-hmm.
I think the consumer is always looking for, when they come into a restaurant, it's supposed to be an away place. Get rid of my cell phones, get rid of my computer, sit down, engage in conversations which are unique nowadays to have in dining rooms, where you feel like it's an away place. We have a great dining experience, great food in a casual environment, and not have a bunch of other things that are distracting you while you're sitting there and you're dining. So this is where I find it somewhat of a challenge sometimes to introduce technology and hospitality, and it's a fine line between something the customers are going to embrace or push back on.
Yeah, sure. All right, Steve, last question for you. For anybody who's listening who might be looking at a theme for their restaurant, or might already have a theme heavily focused in their restaurant, what are some of your suggestions for doing that right? What have you learned in the last decade of Ford's Garage about how a theme should be brought to life, how you can activate a restaurant successfully that has a theme at its core? What are your tips for those folks?
I think the first thing is it's got to be real. It's got to be authentic. So if you're going to go ahead and do that, I take it back to the old Fern bars, Fridays and Bennigan's or whatnot, that had a lot of plants in there, and they were real. They were on brand. They were real. You had to take care of them. And then they eventually went to some plastic stuff where I think anytime you can touch it and it's fake, it really leads to not being something that's real and authentic. You don't want to do things that are off brand. So you can't be all things to all people. If you're going to be specialized in a certain space in the restaurant industry, and I take, In-N-Out Burger is a great example. You don't go there to get a chicken sandwich. You go there to get a burger. They're not going to be all things to all people. And I think we need to make sure that we're offering the expectation of what people have, which is great comfort foods, great hamburgers, great sides, awesome localized draft beers, and keep it on brand and not try and be something that we're not. Because if you try and put a square peg in a round hole, it's not going to work for you. So stay on brand and be authentic and be real.
I like that. Steve Schliemann, the president of Ford's Garage. Steve, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Sam, great to talk to you. We'll catch up soon.
That was my interview with Steve Schliemann, the president of Ford's Garage USA. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 6 takeaways. My first takeaway is that sometimes in business, you just get lucky. I know that's not much of a takeaway or not much of a tip anyway, but it's amazing to me how lucky Ford's Garage got in the fact that Ford supported the restaurant. You might have had an experience in your own restaurant business. Certainly has happened a lot over the course of the industry. Anytime in business, if you use another brand's image or likeness, another company's image or likeness, you are likely going to get a cease and desist. Honestly, I'm kind of impressed at the boldness with which they opened this restaurant using the Ford brand name. But they got lucky. Ford loved the concept, and now they've entered into a really great brand partnership. I don't know what to tell you as far as advice from this, aside from saying maybe you should take some risks sometimes, even though if it seems like it could be something to get you into a little bit of trouble, you never know. You might get lucky. My second takeaway is that a recognizable brand partner is a powerful tool for expansion. Bigger brands know when they go into a new community, if they already have that brand awareness, then half the job is done for you in finding your customers in that community. If you're not at that point, a partner that can support you and has that brand awareness could open a lot of gateways for you into new communities. Ford has been that for Ford's Garage as they've expanded around the country. When you have a partner like Ford that's able to support them in looking for leases and partner with community leaders, that is a heavy cudgel to have as you expand and again opens a lot of doors for you. Who's that brand partner for you? You might not be so embedded in a concept like Ford is with Ford's Garage, but maybe there are other ways to find brand partners that can help support you as you are growing and open some doors for you. My third takeaway is that interactive elements can help drive excitement within your restaurants. I love the sound of Ford's Garage. As I said in the interview, I haven't had a chance to go to one yet, but I love how these restaurants come together. I love that there are so many cool things to see, the cars, the Model T and Model A vehicles in the restaurants. Steve talked about the fact that kids can go behind the cars and honk the horns. And yeah, as a father, I can tell you just having something for your kids to focus on and to do, that's a game changer. It's fun. It's something beyond sitting at a table and eating food. It is an experience. They have music playing throughout their restaurant. As Steve said, they're very focused on the music in their restaurant. All of this is interactivity. All of this, again, creates an experience that is something fun to do and not just, again, a transaction where you go in for some food. It creates that excitement within your restaurants. My fourth takeaway is that you can be an chain by embedding your community throughout your operation. Chain, of course, has become sort of a dirty word for some food fans because they want to see local restaurants and are very committed to local operators, and that's all fine. But as we all know, a chain is still run by local people and can still have very much a local feel. But you have to put in that work. You have to put in that effort. For Ford's Garage, they're naming burgers after local customers. They're putting local beers on tap. Those are some of the things that Steve talked about, how they want to be an anti-chain chain. They want to feel of the community. That's important for all restaurant concepts as they expand into new communities. How do you partner with local leaders, local businesses? How do you engage with local fans in a way that feels authentic and not like just another chain? My fifth takeaway is that a restaurant theme should not be too in your face. And this is really the crux of this episode, I feel like, talking about just really embedding a theme into your restaurant operation. I brought up Planet Hollywood, and I don't mean to pick on them or a Hard Rock Cafe or similar restaurants. But when you think about a themed restaurant, that's kind of what I thought about when I heard about Ford's Garage. But they're not trying to be that. They don't want to be over the top with the theme or too in your face. They want it to feel authentic and fun and fresh. And so, Steve talked about the fact that they try to really think about the food. They think about the vibe they're creating. They don't want to just be a tourist attraction where you walk in and snap a photo of the place and say, okay, cross that off the list. They want to be somewhere that people want to come back every week and have dinner there. They want regular customers. And so to do that, you have to focus first and foremost on the food and on the experience you're creating, not on the sort of kitschy elements that you put together to create that theme. My sixth and final takeaway is that if technology doesn't match your vibe or aesthetic, focus it where customers can't see it. Certainly the case here with Ford's Garage. They're creating an experience built around 1930s, 1940s vehicles. There's an authenticity they want to support here, and they don't want really futuristic tech tools getting too much in the way or becoming a distraction, as Steve said. So he said instead they're focusing it behind the scenes, back of house. How can you make the experience go faster and be more efficient? You can leverage technology to do that, but you can keep that in the back of house so the customers aren't too distracted by it and they're not too drawn away from that aesthetic that Ford's Garage is trying to create. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.okas@informa.com. Thanks again, and talk to you next week.